Good evening, I'm Stone Grissom and welcome to News 12's Power and Politics. Here with us today is Congressman Lee Zeldin of Long Island's 1st Congressional District. That district includes most of central and eastern Suffolk, including most of Smithtown, as well as the towns of Brookhaven, Riverhead, Southold, Southampton, East Hampton, and Shelter Island. Now, Congressman Zeldin also serves on both the Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you for being here. I know you've had an incredibly long day. You were in Washington, D.C. this morning. You basically just got off a plane and then made it right over here.
I feel like I was there about 5 minutes ago.
So I appreciate you taking the time. You made it here, and we didn't think you were going to be able to pull that off, but you did.
We figured it out. I'm excited that that it worked out, and I'm happy to be with you for the next half hour. Thank you for everyone tuning in at home.
All right. Well, let's start off with something not controversial at all. We'll start off with the impeachment inquiry. I know that that's not a hot button topic right now. Let me just ask you right off. You've read the whistleblower complaint, and you've read the White House release transcript, or at least the summary that the White House put together of the transcript, the July 24th phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So is there anything, does that trouble you, what the White House, let's start with the transcript itself, what the White House released. Does that trouble you, the conversation that the president was having with Ukraine?
It potentially could have become an issue depending on how the Ukrainian president would have taken it, how the follow-up would have been, if the thought was that somehow that the United States would be withholding aid, would not be providing the aid that the United States has now provided them, if not for, let's say, starting or continuing an investigation against Burisma's, the highest profile company. There's a lot into this issue beyond just Burisma, which has had many years and a long history of corruption. But President Zelensky, actually, not only did he not take it as a threat or a quid pro quo, he didn't even know that there was a hold on that aid. He learned about it. The aid was released. So the way that the narrative has gotten out there in that national debate, and the way that people have spun that call and said that's an impeachable offense, and that we're going to remove the president of the United States for it.
Why do you say spun the call? Because when you read the whistleblower complaint and you look at the timeline, the facts, the actual facts that we know of to be true, and the president has admitted to, seem troubling on their face, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, he withheld aid. He then made a phone call. He sent his private attorney, someone who doesn't even work for the White House, Rudy Giuliani. He's not a government employee. We know that Rudy Giuliani met with not President Zelensky, but with his aides. Zelensky brings that up during the phone call and says, yes, I'd like to meet him too. The president then says, yes, I'm going to send Rudy Giuliani there. And he then mentions Joe Biden, his political rival, in that conversation 3 times, and asks him to start an investigation into Joe Biden, his rival. I mean, on its face, doesn't it seem troubling?
Yeah, well, so to answer your question about what is being spun, I'll give you a couple of examples. There are more if we had more time. One example is where Adam Schiff, who's running point for House Democrats, is saying that on the call that President Trump is asking President Zelensky to manufacture dirt. And I hope that the transcript from today's deposition, interview, whatever they want to call it, I hope that gets released for the American public so they can read it, because Ambassador Volker had great insight on this.
And he was on that July call.
He actually wasn't.
He wasn't on the July call.
No, he wasn't. He was. So he was a special envoy to Ukraine, who was actually in Ukraine visiting the area that has been caught up in a lot of the fighting between Ukraine and Russia, and it just so happened he wasn't on the call, but he did meet with President Zelensky the next day, and that's something that became a paragraph of the whistleblower complaint, which was a whole other line of questioning today at the deposition. Another example is when the House Intelligence Committee had the Director of National Intelligence before them, and they were asking questions. The opening statement, putting words in the mouth of the president, changing the words. Later, when Chairman Schiff was called out on it, he said it was just a parody. But those are 2 examples. But with regards to the call itself, the president, again, President Zelensky didn't even know that there was a hold placed on the funding, and then the funding was released regardless. Ukraine did not have to do anything.
Regardless of what?
Well, so an allegation of quid pro quo would say that
well, it came after the phone call, right?
It was after that it was released.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But
that's after Zelensky agreed to open an investigation into Joe Biden.
Well, but well, first off,
so what, isn't that in
first
and of
off
itself?
so first off, Burisma, which is the company that employed Hunter Biden, $50,000 plus, Joe Biden's son Hunter.
But that's
so that
that's
investigation.
a conspiracy theory.
Well, actually, it's an investigation that's open.
It's an open because President Trump wants that, but that was already dormant.
No, that was no. It
was open
wasn't
a long time ago. That's the conspiracy theory.
But no, so that was earlier this year. The prosecutor in Ukraine announced that they had reopened the Burisma investigation. They specifically Hunter. And the payments made to Hunter's company are connected
it's not Hunter's
to that
company. He was a consultant to the company. It wasn't his company.
No. But there was payments to Hunter's company from Burisma.
From Burisma.
So those payments from Burisma to Hunter's company were tied into what the prosecutor had announced earlier this year in 2019. So that investigation is going on. Nothing happened from July 25th to the beginning of September when the payments, when the whole gets released, the payments get made. There was no new investigation into the Bidens that opened. There was no progress to it. By the way, it's really important to note that hold was getting released. I mean, there's a lot of strong bipartisan support for providing that aid to the Ukraine. There's a lot of support within the president's administration for it. There certainly was a lot of support for it on the Ukrainian side. So the money was getting paid, and it was actually, we ended up not only paying them more money than originally projected. We also include the lethal weapons and the javelins, something that in years past we weren't even willing to provide as a country to Ukraine.
Okay, I understand that you want to bring up Burisma, but that investigation has been debunked. That everyone says that was debunked. And in fact, Joe Biden going over there saying that he wanted to fire or wanted the former prosecutor fired was because that former prosecutor wasn't investigating corruption in Ukraine. And that was backed by the EU, backed by the International Monetary Fund. It was backed by the Obama administration. In fact, it was also backed by the Ukraine's ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pratt, who President Trump then has appointed. He's now the current ambassador to Greece. So the Trump administration doesn't have any implication or
I don't know if I would use the word debunked with regards to Burisma, because
it hasn't been debunked by conspiracy theorists, but it has been debunked by Ukraine, and it has been debunked.
But it hasn't. I mean, but as far as the current prosecutor, the former prosecutor, and the prosecutor before that, I mean, for years, Burisma has a huge corruption issue, and the oligarch that runs it. I mean, they have. The biggest issue for Ukraine, this is going back decades, is a massive corruption issue within our country. So President Zelensky just came in. He's a new administration.
Yes.
And part of his platform when he came in over the course of the last couple of months, remember the July 25th call is supposed to be a congratulatory call. That was the purpose of it, because Zelensky had just gotten elected. Mm-hmm. His main platform was running to finally set this country in this new direction of rooting out corruption.
But he never mentions corruption. The word corruption does not come in that phone call at all.
Well,
Joe Biden comes up 3 times.
Yeah, well,
that doesn't bother you? I mean, I know it's your party, and I know, and if the Democrats were on the other side, they would probably be doing the same thing. But on its face,
I don't know if I would agree that corruption wasn't brought up in that call.
The word corruption never comes up in that. If the White House released transcript, the White House released, it never comes up.
I don't know if there's some other synonyms being used in there for corruption. I'll also say that. That basically has been the main point of contention between the administration before this call even took place. Mm-hmm. The relationship between the United States and Ukraine over the course of the last couple of years, the main point of contention has been this perception that Ukraine is not serious about confronting corruption within their own country.
Okay.
So President Trump has beliefs. You go back to September of 2017. When he was meeting with the last administration and prepping him for those meetings, he was outlining the need to go after corruption within Ukraine back then. Inside of the energy sector, I mean, I've written letters on it too. This is before the phone call or anything like that. They have huge corruption issues inside their energy sector that they just haven't been serious about. So you replace one soft on corruption prosecutor with another soft on corruption prosecutor. That actually, in my opinion, is one of, if not the biggest reason why Zelensky is in the place that he's in right now. is because he seems to be someone who is serious about tackling corruption. Put aside the United States domestic politics, you put aside the phone call, they have an issue that they need to get serious with. Forget about Burisma, forget about corruption, as it relates to, what we've spoken about with Joe and Hunter, Biden and accusations, allegations. All of that aside, Ukraine has a corruption issue that is very much predates Donald Trump even.
No.
I mean, he was a host of Celebrity Apprentice when probably the first time we were talking about that.
Right. Now, no doubt Ukraine has a corruption issue, right, and historically does. But the president didn't say, you need to work on corruption. He said, you need to investigate, open an investigation against my political rival. He didn't use the word political rival, but he said Joe Biden and his son, who is his political rival and the former vice president of the United States. He asked specifically for him to open up an investigation. I'm going to let you answer and respond to that in a second, because I also want to ask you about what the president said today, but we're going to take a quick break and come right back. We'll be right back with more from Congressman Lee Zeldin when News 12 Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to News 12's Power and Politics. Once again, I'm joined by Congressman Lee Zeldin. Mr. Zeldin represents the 1st Congressional District. That district includes most of central and eastern Suffolk County, a very large district and very eclectic as well. Again, appreciate your time. We're having a great conversation last break. I want to get to what the president said today, but I'm going to let you, I just want to ask a simple question. Is it okay, I'm not asking if the president did this, but is it okay for a president to put pressure on a foreign leader in order to investigate his political rival, just in general? Is that an okay thing to do?
Yeah, I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't ask a foreign country to investigate a political rival.
But is it okay?
I would say what's a huge problem is anyone, regardless of whether they're a candidate for office or not, committing any type of an illegal offense, whether you're committing that offense in the United States or abroad. One of the good things about an investigation or an accusation, when it's not true, you're cleared, and quite frankly, sometimes the mud gets flung right back on the person who made the accusation if it's not true. In this particular case, I'm not as familiar with the allegation as it relates to China. I am aware of the payments made to Hunter Biden, but I'm not as aware of the Vice President Joe Biden component of it. The Ukraine piece, I'm much more familiar with. But I would say that as it relates to me, I don't have any plans to ever in the future ask a foreign country to investigate.
And you wouldn't do that
someone I'd be
because
running against.
that's improper to you.
Yeah, I just wouldn't do that. I mean, that's just. But I would, at the same time, I would caution anyone who would ever want to run against me in the future. Don't be breaking laws, overseas, because it's
and
a fair consequence.
If you thought they had broken laws, you would reach out to a foreign power and let them help you with the election.
No, not to help me with an election.
Well, and open an investigation that we have no
control
control
over. But again, I already answered the question.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
But for someone else who does, I would say the first test is, did they commit a crime in that foreign country?
Okay. And as it relates to this, but as it relates to this case, can't we agree that that investigation's over? And in fact, even mentioning Joe Biden's son.
Well, I don't think there ever was an investigation into Joe Biden. I mean, I think that and by the way, even as it relates to his son, the investigation was primarily about Burisma.
But why would there be an investigation into Joe Biden if President Trump is not asking
for it? With regards to the Vice President Biden, the piece that I take more offense to is not any violation of any law in Ukraine. It's that the Vice President Biden was conflicted out. I mean, Burisma hired Hunter Biden not for his energy experience, not for his ability to speak. Well, I personally have a problem with paying someone just because they are the vice president's son.
Should we be investigating President Trump's children? I mean, Ivanka Trump has opened up trademarks with her name in China, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE.
Long-standing. I mean, these are businesses the occupations that they've been involved in a long time. This is what they do for it. This is what they do for a living. They're not getting paid
They are
money,
getting paid.
$50,000 a month, just because they are.
Ivanka Trump's wealth has been elevated to almost $100 million since the president went into office. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric, both his sons, still regain ownership and management control of the Trump organization.
Sure.
And Trump has not divested all of his interest into that company, and they advise him.
Yeah, but let's
Shouldn't
not
they be investigating
But
them?
we shouldn't have any double standards here. I mean,
so should we investigate them?
Mayor Bloomberg's net worth went up by tens of billions of dollars as mayor of New York City.
Okay, so why are we investigating Joe Biden?
Well, because in that
why are you okay
particular
with that?
case, in that particular case, you had an ongoing investigation into Burisma, where the Vice President of the United States goes to Ukraine
And doesn't ask for the
threatens the loss of $1 billion if you don't immediately fire the prosecutor.
But not because of the investigation. That investigation was not ongoing when he called for that.
And
that was backed by the EU.
It was.
No, it was not.
It was.
No, it is not. It was not going on at the time.
According to
IMF says it
Shokin,
wasn't. The EU says it wasn't.
according to Shokin signed affidavit, the prosecutor at the time, it was an active investigation.
Shokin is the guy who wanted to be removed.
That was the guy who got
he
fired.
Wasn't investigating.
And
he wasn't investigating.
Well, first, I'm just saying that. So, as far as what we do know about, we know that we have Shokin's signed affidavit.
Who is the corrupt prosecutor?
Who was
the corrupt prosecutor?
He was the prosecutor who got fired. So you have him, and you have the documentation sent from the lawyers for Hunter. They contacted the prosecutor, and those communications we have from right after the new prosecutor ends up coming into place.
Because we wanted the new prosecutor to investigate corruption. And that's what he did. In fact, Burisma,
I'm pretty sure Hunter's attorney was not contacting the new prosecutor in Ukraine.
You're okay with President Trump trying to get Joe Biden investigated because Joe Biden was trying to get a corrupt prosecutor, not a prosecution.
No.
Prosecutor.
Actually, that's not what I said. I said
you were saying the prosecutor.
I said
was
with regards to Vice President Joe Biden, that this is not something, in my opinion, that is as much a matter for Ukraine under Ukraine's laws to be investigating Joe Biden, as much as in the United States, I have an issue here domestically. This is not an international issue. This is not about the 2020 election. I believe that Joe Biden was conflicted out.
How can it not be about the 2020 election?
I have a problem with it because Joe Biden was conflicted out. He went to Ukraine and threatened the loss of $1 billion if you don't immediately fire the prosecutor. At the Obama
administration, the EU, the International Monetary Fund, and a bunch of pro-democracy groups.
I would say the fact that his son is making $50,000 a month only because it's the vice president's son, and that is
so
a director
you call for an
on
investigation to President Trump's children?
For what?
For all of their in private business dealings.
No.
Well, why not?
Because they're not being hired. You know how many business dealings that they are turning down because it's improper.
Do you know how many business dealings they've turned down? How many?
Well, I don't know the total number. I know some of them.
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of opportunities to do business abroad that they're not doing.
I wish I could talk about this topic. I just want to get quick.
But they're also allowed to have an occupation.
Absolutely.
Right. But that wasn't an occupation that Hunter had with Burisma.
An occupation that's tied directly to the president. So we don't have time for the soundbite, but real quickly, I'm going to get you to respond to what the president said today. The president said that he also was calling on China also to investigate Joe Biden and his son. Now, he's not just asking Ukraine now. Now he's asking other foreign powers. China is not our friend. China is a foe to us. Is that okay?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm not familiar specifically with what the allegation even is in China, other than the payments that I do know that were made to Hunter. I know that there's more to that story that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
The best defense that I would be able to make on behalf of Vice President Joe Biden and Hunter Biden would be me knowing that they didn't do anything wrong and they didn't commit any crimes.
I have to cut you off. We're going to be right back. I've taken a quick break. We'll be right back with more after this. Welcome back to News 12's Power and Politics. Once again, I'm joined by Congressman Lee Zeldin of Long Island's 1st Congressional District. Very spirited debate, conversation that we've been having. You've been a great sport, and I appreciate you being so open and conversational about this. Let me just give you a chance to respond again. Does it bother you, and I'll let you just full response, does it bother you that the president, now that we know, today he said it, he wants an investigation by China, an investigation by Ukraine. you mentioned both countries, of Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son. Does that raise red flags for you?
Yeah, I think in the Ukraine issue, I would like to know the latest on the Burisma investigation, which, we mentioned, we learned several months ago back in the spring was reopened. I don't know what the status is of that. I know that they were looking into the payments made as it relates to Hunter. That's not related to Vice President Biden. The Vice President Biden piece, I mean, if you want to have a vetting, if you want to have accountability, the best way to do that.
Have a vetting. I mean, let's.
Well, I was going to say
the
the best way that you can have a vetting or an accountability as it relates to Vice President Biden is for the American voters to have a say when they go to the polls during an election.
During an election. So you want a foreign country to investigate the rival of the president?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the better course of action than what was being asked as it relates to Vice President Biden. And again, I'm not aware of Vice President Biden even committing any crimes. Vice President Biden committing crimes in the Ukraine. I would say here at home, I have an issue with what he did. I believe he was conflicted out and that he should not have been the one delivering that threat, considering that all the different factors. As it relates to China, I need to learn more about what the allegations are. I'm only familiar with the payments to Hunter.
But we're running completely out of time. And I appreciate you all the time we have. Thank you for watching our Power and Politics program right here at News 12 Long Island.